he did all of the dirty work on the front end, and he ends up finishing second in here. So with a little bit less pressure, at least on paper, you have to think with that advantageous outside post and the speed he's likely to show, he's just a very logical type.
And even under those circumstances, and I'm not disagreeing with anything you said, he still ran an 84 buyer that day, which would make him very tough in here. And I think one of his chief competition is this horse, Glory Road. And here he is winning last time. The difference being, first of all, his horse is claimed from Linda Rice, and we'll show you a stat for that in a second. The other being that he got a very contested pace. I mean, when they went 45 and change to the half, and this race just completely and totally incinerated, and now he's in a situation where the pace dynamic, at least on paper, appears to be completely opposite.
Right, he had everything go his way in terms of the flow of the race, while Victorious Wave did not necessarily last time out. So I think that's why you have to at least downgrade him a little bit. Certainly capable and a contender, but you just don't want to take these horses that'll be around similar prices that had things in their favor last time out.
Yeah, I'm generally against horses like that, and I guess he's not impossible. And horses claimed from Linda Rice on the dirt over the last 5 years, 13% with a $1.06 ROI. Those are not the kind of numbers I wanted to bet into. It probably is going to be a somewhat shortish price with this horse. See what price David made this horse on the morning line.
3 to 1.
3 to 1, and we had the scratch of who the 4 was not taking any money. I thought Ragtime Blues could improve dropping off the claim. He's a hard horse to read. When he's good, he's very good, and he figures to be forward in here as well. So I'm going to be interested to see how he does. He would be my other horse in this race. I'm going to let Glory Road beat me. I scratched him for third, but I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, Walder has some good numbers first off the claim. It is concerning that he's a horse that was eased. Of course, you never want to see that, but maybe they just felt as though something was a little bit off. And I think it's at least encouraging that you see him come back relatively quickly. Couldn't have been anything major.
He was protected and eased, but the claim wasn't voided.
Yep.
Makes it very difficult to read these voided claims, to be honest with you. Race number 4 will be the final race today that is off the turf. It's at 1 mile, as is the first race today. And keep in mind, the 12th race, by the way, moved to the inner turf course for those aficionados. The rails are still out 18 on both courses. What'd you do?
I went to the main track only, who's a horse that just figures to have some forward advantage, and I feel as though he's one that... Are we supposed to only have 2?
No. My picks are 11, 7, 10, 5, guys. There is a superfecta in this race. And I know for the 37 people on the internet that seem to think that we want to make 4 picks, no, some people would like us to make 4 picks. Trust me, if anybody on this show ever takes credit for picking a horse 4th that wins, let me know.
And I'm 11, 7, 4, 5 in here.
11, 7, 4, 5,
yes.
11, 7, 10, 5 for me. Anyway, how much time do we need to spend on Z-Bear? But spend as much time as you like, Sarah.
I mean, Mariachi's obviously very good, a horse that beat this one last time, and just the numbers that this one has in terms of buyer speed figures, they lay over a field like this. So I just didn't really see anybody else as that typical type of dirt horse that could compete with a horse like Z-Bear.
Yeah, I mean, the questions on him are multi. One is he's got to get a mile. And he's been running at shorter distances, so it's not like Linda was dying to run him a mile. And second of all, he had a very juicy trip last time on a rail that was very good and things favorable. I think he's a very likely winner at a very, very short price. But I just want to point those things out. And at least a horse like the number 7, Shared Success, has some success going longer and has run well going longer. So, you have to ask yourself if you want to back up or you just want to go all in on a horse that's got to be. What's this horse going to be here? 1 to 2, 2 to 5? I mean, how much money
Maybe
can anybody...
Cody's Wish.
How much... Cody's Wish. We should get Tom Amos on here to talk about Cody's Wish. Anyhow, we'll move on to race number 5. Tom laid down one of the great rants. I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't. It was one of the great rants of the show, and it wasn't even me.
You've been
I respect the concept of playing against him. We'll talk about him later, whether you or I want to play against him. But
if you want to, it's a great time to do it. But
we'll
get
see
there.
if it's a great time. Opportunistically, perhaps.
Price-wise.
Race number 5, Quick to Accuse. Talk about him.
This is sort of that other DePaz kind of look because I think a lot of people will take a little bit of a look at Golden Arm, but this is one that's making the 3-year-old debut, was second out and fired right back to finish second to Arctic Arrogance, who we know is a good horse that ultimately tried the Kentucky Derby Trail. He's tried open in the Remsen, then it wasn't seen for a little while. So I feel as though just that natural progression from 2 to 3 and a horse that we know at least had some ability as a 2-year-old, I think he could be a little bit interesting. I worry that his only success was on the front end from the rail. I want to see him rate and do it successfully.
He won't be in front in this race.
No, he won't. But I think he will be a fair price today and could take that other step forward.
I've got him 4th. I get all that. Horacio De Paz, for what it's worth, 6 to 12-month layoffs on the dirt. He's 4 for 25 overall, $1.78 ROI. But he's 0 for 8 cutting back in distance with none of them hitting the board. Now, listen, it's only an 8-horse sample, and he's going to be a respectable price, and you would never not bet a horse because of a stat. But I was kind of wondering and looking at that and thinking maybe this sort of rings true that this is more of a stepping stone for him. But listen, I agree with you. He certainly has a lot of things that you can recommend about him. I like the 4 Golden Arm. Take a look at his debut, and this is a horse, in my opinion, that got a little unlucky, and then they decided, I guess, to check a box. In his second start, I mean, this horse was very impressive. I think the rail was good. I don't think it was a huge gold rail by any stretch. But this horse fought off a very tough field. And there are some good horses in here that I think it's Chris Engelhardt is a horse that came back that had run well in his debut, and then he came back with a huge win. I think Eric Cancel rode the horse. He got drowned in here, and this was an extraordinarily impressive debut. Then he runs into Fusky Island, who's on like a mission, and even Ocean's Reserve has improved with a couple of wins, and he ends up chasing that pace. He didn't even run that badly.
He ran about the same number.
I mean, he could have absolutely just completely fallen apart, and he still ran his race. For whatever reason, they decided to try the turf with him. He has, I think, a smidgen of turf pedigree. It didn't work out, and now they're back in a race. Now, I know it's 7, but we'll see. We'll see. You know, he's going to have to deal with some other speeds.
Right.
I'm a fan of this horse, and I want to give him a chance. I'm a little worried about 7. Let's talk about some other horses here. You have Be the Boss in there as well.
Yeah, this is one that I just felt as though he has to do it in a dirt race and really prove that he belongs at a class level like this, because he has been running on the turf lately. But I do like that he won a race this distance of the 7 furlongs in an off the turf example, and that was a pretty high number. I know Winning Connection's not that great.
That's why I have a problem with it. But to be fair, he was close to the pace, and Winning Connections was just sucking up at the end, so his bigger figure may have been more a result of dynamics than Be the Boss. But it's still an off the turf race.
Right.
I mean, he's got Asavelo's Mission that we both have in there just seems like a logical horse.
Especially if you think there's going to be some
for
pace.
Linda. Exactly. I thought the 3, excuse me, 2 for Charging. We'll break after 6, by the way, guys. 2 for Charging, a little bit interesting in here. I know he's off the layoff, cutting back a little bit, but he ran pretty well to close and win here. I mean, he runs the kind of race he ran here 3 back. I don't think he's totally impossible. And then he got wired by some pretty good horse in Longren, too, who got loose. I kind of like him a little bit as well, but I like Golden Arm.
Yeah.
And you like Quick to Access. Race number 6, we are on the turf. Grooms All Business is out. I'm not stopping picking against Caravel now. I'm on a mission.
I was going to ask.
Well, she's way the horse to beat here. Only a fool would suggest otherwise. And obviously, this is a much softer spot than last time. But we'll take a look at her winning. I still maintain that she has managed, and I know she can stalk a little bit, but she has yet to face a grade 1 type pace in a turf sprint. And I believe with the presence of No Balls, she is going to face that kind of pressure. Larry Ravelli, not the kind of guy that rates speed horses. And he's also not the kind of guy that doesn't come to races unless he really thinks he can win. But I mean, come on, she's way the horse to beat.
And I get it if you still want to try to beat her, because she's a tough horse to take at these extremely short prices, because I do agree that she has not faced the kind of challenges early that you want to see from this type of horse at this grade 1 level that's reeling off these wins. You want to see them really earn it. And I don't know that she necessarily has.
She's earned, I mean, she won the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. I don't want to be that hard on her.
The
but she
main speed
hasn't
in that
had
race didn't break.
No,
So
that was the luckiest win in the history of not just Breeders' Cup races, full
good.
grade 1 races as well.
Yeah, she's extremely good. She's extremely talented. She's the horse to beat. I picked her. But at the same time, I understand the concept that you're trying to bring to the table, that you want to see her be tested a little bit more.
Yeah, I do. And I think that she's just gotten, and I just don't see, and we'll show No Balls, and I think this is winning the turf sprint. And yeah, I'm calling him No Balls.
That's his name.
It's his name. Let's stop pretending. If they're going to let him name it, we're going to call him that. I will say, in this turf sprint at Churchill, he also got away with a situation where, and I think this is the Churchill race.
It is.
Yeah,
Yep.
with a relatively tepid pace. But he ran off, and then he got involved in the faster pace last time against obviously much weaker horses. I don't know, man. Larry Ravelli doesn't strike me as a guy that takes a lot of shots. He likes to stay in a comfort zone and find the right spots and pick and choose, and he does a very good job of finding the right places for his horses. I'm going to take a shot. He just runs her off her feet today.
It'd be nice if someone finally did. I mean, it'd be
well, it'd
just
be nice if
exciting
at
to
least
see.
there's a competitive situation and we can
Right.
see what she does under those circumstances.
Right.
Let's talk about some others in here. Cogburn. I don't. You've got him second. I've got him fourth. He certainly doesn't class up to these. But as we show the start and then his race last time, it's hard not to be a little impressed, right?
Well, isn't he a little bit interesting? I know he was one that flashed a lot of talent on the dirt early, but then we see him switch over to the turf, and he hasn't had things his own way, particularly in this race. I mean, you can't get left like that and still be successful in these 5 furlong type of turf sprints, yet he still was. It's an incredibly impressive effort to see him overcome a situation like that and just close with this kind of turn of foot. And I know the numbers aren't necessarily as high in terms of buyer speed figures from what we've seen from some of his competition today, but you have to just really take this with a little bit of interest at what's going to be, I think, a fair enough price.
Yeah, I don't think you can ignore that. And if you think the race could fall apart, the thing that worries me about him, though, is it's not the first time he's gotten left.
Right.
And that really worries me because I don't care what happens here. He's in a lot of trouble. He gets left because, I mean, if you think this race is going to fall apart, why would you ignore Thin White Duke? Thin White Duke was in a relatively paceless race last time out against a pretty good field. I mean, that was a very solid field. There were a lot of horses in that race that thought about running here. He's the only one that came back, and he had to be close to the pace he wants. And he's also run some pretty good race. He almost beat Golden Pal in this race last year, and then he won the Lucky Coin, which is now the Harvey Pack, by the way. So he's run well up here, and if you think this race is going to fall apart, I'm going to use him a little bit
and
here.
And if you're at all worried about the give in the ground, he can handle it. You know that he's capable of handling a surface that we're probably going to see. I know things are drying out and improving.
No, but there's plenty of give in this turf. No,
right,
it's a good point. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Welcome back to Talking Horses. Sarah Albadwi and Andy Serling, brought to you by our good friends at Saratoga Water and the Fasig-Tipton Lure. Of course, the sales are Monday and Tuesday. The select sale over across the street. If you've never been, it's a lot of fun. Best bar you'll ever go to. It's a good time to go and always a nice crowd and fun to go there. Hopefully the weather will cooperate. If Dakota Gold wins this race, and I scratched him for third, I mean, I'm not way against him, but this is a horse that's coming off an extraordinarily opportunistic scenario.
And he's one he's extremely talented. He's been able to compete at this kind of level in terms of listed stakes, but this is a tough field in general. And he's one that does come from a little bit off the pace. And while there's the talent there, you don't want to take him at an extremely short price. So I think there's a lot going on here. And to take a horse like this that, yes, he can win, and yes, he's probably the horse to beat, there's just so many other ways to go, and I think there's a little bit better value available.
Yeah, and he's clearly improved as a 4-year-old. He's not impossible. But I know that Jerry the Nipper came back and won last week. He improved his buyer figure 2 points, but Jerry the Nipper was closer to the pace in that race. So while I wouldn't say he was badly compromised because he's shown the ability to rate, he was at least doing a little more dirty work, and he got a much more cozy trip in his next start. So it's not that surprising that he was able to improve his fig. He's supposed to. And in a lot of ways, it doesn't, in many ways, it doesn't indicate that Dakota Gold could ever improve his fig in here. I like the number 5, Speaking Scout. We'll take a look at his last race in the Monmouth, and it's a race that I felt like I should have made more money with. I think there's a very big argument. I know it was a very popular win when Channel Maker won. I think if Never Explained had gotten a better ride in the Bowling Green, he would have won. He certainly would have been no worse than second.
He ran very well.
I don't know why he wasn't forward, and then he rushed up after that and wide the whole way. Everybody else was saving ground that was effective, but that's another story. The fact is, though, that I thought this horse ran third in a race where he made that made a move a little bit early in there. I thought he ran well. I thought it was a good race, and I just think he's an improved horse for Graham Motion that's extraordinarily logical in this spot.
And he has some of those races to go back to as well where he's shown up and run competitively. It's not like this is the first time that he's run a good race in the history of his career.
Right.
And the 2 horses that did finish ahead of him, they've come back and run well. So you know that that's a race that at least holds some form. I think he's very interesting too, and I do agree with you that it was a little bit of a premature attack towards the front end.
But you have taken Portfolio Company on top. We'll take a look at his last win.
This is a horse that I've always had a little bit of interest in, going back to when he was a 2-year-old, and I think that he does his best running when he's a little bit more involved early. He's a horse that's been a little bit more headstrong, fighting with the rider, and I think that Joel Rosario is a good fit for him, and getting him to relax a little bit more early and using some of that speed to his advantage. I know that he's not necessarily the speed of the speed in a race like this with some of the horses to the outside, but I do think from the rail things are a little simplified to try to get him into some forward position. I also just think he's gotten really good lately, too.
I agree with all of that. I think they got, because he kind of ran off a bit in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and he set that ridiculous pace there, they kind of got in their head that they needed to rate him. And I know he won here rating. He got a gold rail trip. He beat an inferior field. But the reality is that he's been better when they've let him go ahead and find his position and be a bit forward. Obviously, you know, assuming he gets out of the gate, Midday Image is going to be in front of him, and even Dr. Davis probably. But I know Joel. Joel's going to get good position with this horse early. He's not going to get in the way of the running style that's been working for him. We know he can handle given the ground, and like you say, he's a horse that always had the potential to be good. He's been a big disappointment overall, but he seems to be putting it together, and now we'll see if he can take another step forward in what's an ungraded stake. But it's a pretty strong stake, and named for Lure, who, in my opinion, was one of the most brilliant turf horses I've ever seen in this country. When he was good, his Breeders' Cup Mile, his first one, was one of the great races I've ever seen. His trainer, Sugar McGay, has Smoke and Tea. I thought he had a pretty soft trip last time. Didn't think it was impossible. I thought this was a slightly tougher spot.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think he's one that a lot of people are attracted to because he has run in some okay spots, but I think this is a stiffer competition for him today in a spot like this, and I just don't know if he quite classes up.
And I'm just glad to see Tiz the Bomb in here, whose trainer's original intentions were, I believe there's a quote somewhere of using the English Guineas as a prep for the Epsom Derby. Fortunately, they didn't take that route with him. Unfortunately, they did with Classic Causeway.
This is a much more logical spot for a horse like this, and I know he's coming off a bit of a trip last time. I've really never liked him, but I think that if you like him, today you'll get a fair enough price.
I'm going to stick with the former part of your statement. I've never really gotten him at all. Race number 8 is the Test, the first of 3 Grade 1s. It's a tremendous race, and it's really what the Test is sort of about. It's bringing some routers coming back, and it's obviously got a sprinter stretching out a bit. And Richie and I were looking over, there's really a plethora of horses that won both the Test and the Alabama, and that was in the day when it was 9 days before. You'll never see it again. Gopher Juan did it. Society Selection did it. A lot of very good horses did it. In fact, Quay's Quilt did it, and she went on to beat Chris Everett, who was an incredible horse when she won the Alabama. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out with the different changes. And Maple Leaf Mel, you've got her on top. She certainly drew a tremendous post for herself here, but this is far and away the biggest test she's ever had.
Right, and of course the name of the race speaks for it all. She's just one that I feel as though if she was drawn inside of Money's Gold, I'd have to go in a different direction. But because she does draw favorably to the outside of this field, she'll get to keep an eye on what these other horses are doing to her inside, because I think it's very, very possible that Money's Gold is faster than her early, and she's going to have to sit just off of her. We'll see if that ends up being effective for her, as this is the toughest field that she's faced to date. But I mean, how can you ignore a horse that just has been getting better and better and better and just facing everything that comes her way so far?
I have no argument with any of that, and it'll be interesting. She has she normally gets out of the gate about as quickly as any horse you'll see. And so she may get the jump on Money's Gold, but it's hard to imagine Money's Gold not being aggressive in this race. And, you know, I think back to one of the best races that bad senior moment here. Who is that brilliant sprinting filly? The cheaper, brilliant sprinting filly that never seemed to lose. She was second in the Breeders' Cup Sprint way, way back.
Then you're asking the wrong person.
It's embarrassing. Anyway, she ran in a race when Victory Ride won for Rusty Arnold, and she got extra heat. And she got involved in the pace. They went 21 and change, 43 and change, and she was still hanging around at the end. And Victory Ride was a very, very good horse, did run her down in that race. But in defeat, it was probably maybe the best race that she ever ran, especially trying to go 7 furlongs. Maple Leaf Mel's got to try to do that here, but there's no arguing she's good. Bill Parcells, her owner, will try to get his first Grade 1 win. He's had a lot of big wins, but he's never won a Grade 1 at the racetrack. We'll take a look at the horses out of the Acorn, and that's all of them. Pretty Mischievous, Darth Vader, and Money's Gold. I want to start with Money's Gold. I think she will appreciate the cutback. I'm not her biggest fan. David Aragon was the first one to point out to me that the horses out of the 8 Bells are not doing justice to that 92 buyer. And she's also a horse that now has to do it without Lasix. All of her big races came without Lasix. She's got to deal with Maple Leaf Mel, put that one away, and hold off the 2 horses she's running against here, one of whom, Pretty Mischievous, is looking to wrap up a 3-year-old Eclipse, deserved filly Eclipse. And she's pretty darn good.
I'd agree with all of that. I was listening to his Timeform US Pacecast this morning about how that race ends up being one of the negative key races, to use his words, and Money's Gold.
He's right. He said it to me over a month ago, and he's right.
Money's Gold is one of the ones that actually ran the best out of that race in defeat in the Acorn, running 4th in there. And I know that having her come back in a spot like this where she's cutting back in distance, and maybe you just say, oh, she just didn't want to go that far. She's going to be in front. She's going to be maybe 3rd choice today. You want to take her. But I'm not totally convinced, just like him, that we are going to see her return to some of those bigger races we saw
She has run
earlier
some
on.
huge figures, so if you want to go for that. As far as Pretty Mischievous, I like the cutback for her. I think it makes perfect sense for her in this race. I don't see any problem with it whatsoever, and she's just very good.
Yeah, there's no denying that. I know the rail may be a little bit of a concern for some,
Why?
but she's a horse that comes from off the pace, but she's not exactly that set closer. She can be a little bit more tactical, too.
I think she's done enough in her career to suggest that you shouldn't be worried because she drew the rail and there's other speed in here. I mean, her Kentucky Oaks, where she was attacking the pace wide the whole way and still able to win, was very good. But I do prefer Darth Vader. I thought Darth Vader, kind of the light went off a bit with her. I mean, she had run okay, but I thought her Kentucky Oaks was actually very good overall. And then last time, she was in that tough spot between horses. She had to make that first move. She's between horses, and she never gave an inch. And today, she draws outside of Pretty Mischievous. Now, I don't worry about the rail position, Pretty Mischievous, but I like the fact that now she's the hunter, and Pretty Mischievous is more the prey in that situation, where it was the opposite last time. And I just think she's a dramatically improving horse, and she'll be a fair enough price in here. It's a very, very tough race. But I do like her chances here quite a bit. I'm sort of siding with her and Pretty Mischievous against the 2, but I'm not against Maple Leaf Mel. She's extremely good. What about Jersey Pearl, who ran this huge race last time? Are we totally ignoring her as a potential speed threat in here, or is she just not fast enough to keep up? Probably not.
I just worry about her classing up to a field like this when we've seen so much from these top contenders in the top 4 already. But, I mean, is this the spot where maybe she takes another step forward? Clearly extremely talented.
She was good last time.
She was very good last time.
Yeah, I mean, the horse, I guess, more likely to be forward is Clearly Unhinged. I love that name.
Yeah, that's great.
And she's 2 for 2 sprinting. And let's face it, her debut was very good, but she too has to step it up.
No, and I like that we do see some alternatives to these top 4 that actually have a viable opportunity and ability to at least hit the board here, if not spring an upset. So it's a good renewal of this race.
Yeah, and I think people need to remember, and I think this goes for a lot of people in this game, there are races that it's better to run and lose than not run at all. If a horse like Clearly Unhinged or Jersey Pearl wins this race, it ups their value
Significantly.
way more than the $500,000 total purse in this race.
4th.
Second, maybe, but whatever. It's an opportunity, and it's also an opportunity to see where you belong. And maybe you find out we're not good enough to run at this level, so you take a slightly different path. Maybe you run a good second, and it says, I am good enough, and I belong in some of these races. It's not always about winning and losing. You want to win, but you also need to find things out, and the Test Stakes is one of the most prestigious races for this division run in this country every year. The 9th race, the 2nd straight Grade 1, is the Saratoga Derby. And we need to talk about the Belmont Derby. You've got the first, 3rd, and 4th finishers in here. Farbridge, the winner, Webslinger. You've taken Webslinger on top. I've taken him second. Talk about the race.
Oh, he's just one that, I mean, he's been so good throughout his career so far. If you go back to that American Turf where he was so wide, breaking from post 14, ended up beating Farbridge that day and another very stacked field in here. And he's just a horse that was so far back early, had to make that wide move into a pace that held together in this race. And I just thought he ran extremely well. being so far outside while the other two horses that finished ahead of him got to save more ground.
Yeah, I mean, he came from as far back as Farbridge, so I wouldn't say this race completely held together. I mean, obviously, Mondego, who I don't like at all in here, got a very fortunate situation. To me, the latter point was the one I would stick to. It was also a day, because the rails had just come down, where saving ground was at a dramatic premium. And Farbridge is a horse that's very comfortable, in fact, most comfortable running inside of horses. He was too wide in the first turn, too wide in the second turn, angled over the rail before angling out. He saved a lot of ground. I mean, if you look at Webslinger, he was too wide in the first turn. He did get closer to the inside, but he was 3-4 wide in the second turn and 6 wide turning for home and was really running. I agree. I mean, the other thing that concerns me is that not only do I think Webslinger ran the better race, I also worry that Farbridge is a tricky horse because he's quirky and he runs well every time. In fact, it's a compliment to him that no matter what the circumstance, he seems to always show up. But he's also a horse that likes to get in the right spot in different spots and different things, whatever it is, whether it's running on turns, whether he's a lugging horse that wants to be inside, whatever it is. He feels like a horse that could get himself in trouble.
Right.
And I don't feel like that with Webslinger. I think Webslinger just got the worst of trips, and a
himself out
lot
of
of it was because of taking the rails down the way the track was playing.
Yes.
If it was a fair track that day, I'm not sure he wouldn't have won this race, even under those circumstances.
Yeah. No, he's
So-
one that he's overcoming the trouble. Farbridge is kind of creating it.
Yeah, Farbridge is his own worst enemy, but in spite of it, he's still a remarkably good horse with 3 wins in 2 seconds. He's very, very good. I don't mean to, I don't want to discount him in here, but I am going to try to beat him because I much prefer Webslinger to him. But I'm betting program trading in this race, and you've got him nowhere in there, or you got him 4th. I've got him on top. I know he's moving up. There's no doubt about it. But he ran a very fast race last time out, and you can say what you want. Scramble, who he beat by almost 7 lengths, came back here in a decent
Ran very
allowance
well.
race and was a very unlucky loser, improving his Beyer figure 3 points. And this horse dusted him like he was a gnat. So why are you against him in here?
Just in terms of the class of this field, because I think there's deeper competition and he's going to have to show that he can compete in this type of grade 1 race, but he's obviously very talented. I mean, there's a lot of directions to go in here, and I do end up picking him 4th, but I just want to see him compete at a level like this.
Okay, that's fair. I think he can step up, but you're right. He has to step up and do it against these horses. They were running the filly Aspen Grove in here instead of running against the girls yesterday. Well, the way the race played out yesterday, I was winning. Maybe they made the right move.
Yeah, I mean, she's obviously got some ability, and she won our, Belmont Oaks, but she's one that, didn't she kind of trip out a little bit in here? She got to sit behind horses, wait for some room, got a good spot, stayed more towards the inside than some other horses. Papilio had a terrible trip in there. I don't know. I mean, this is a huge step up in terms of who she's facing today.
Yeah, I thought she got an unbelievably great ride, a great trip, and I just think she's facing better horses. You can want to talk about Lion of War a little bit, a horse that you have in the mix.
This is kind of like that look of that horse that ran, I believe it was 3rd yesterday. These European horses that don't necessarily look so good over in Europe, they end up coming over here and they just end up being a little bit better than some of our horses. And I actually don't think this one ran that badly overseas. Finished 2nd last time, and I just felt as though could be a little bit better than some of our American horses.
He does seem like a horse that should have no problem with the distance in here. And watching his last race, he got sort of buried down on the rail in there, and he never really got to get outside and make the kind of run you would want to make to be effective. I don't think he was going to beat Burdett Road, but I thought he was left in a little bit of a position where it took more running. He's an improving horse, and I agree. I think he's definitely an interesting horse. And of the Europeans, I prefer him over Aspen Grove, though she's obviously a bigger price as well. The Whitney, race number 10, really maybe my favorite race along with the Met every year, and as important a race as there is in the country. I mean, the Breeders' Cup can usurp all of the pomp and circumstance, but these are historical races that have great, great history that the Breeders' Cup is 50 years from having. Let's look at the Met Mile. We'll talk about Cody's Wish, Zandon, White Abarrio, show the last half mile. The reason I wanted to show more of the race here is I think it's fair to say that White Abarrio, I thought, got the best of the trips because he kind of just waited on horses and let them make premature moves in here. Well, I thought you could argue that Zandon may have moved a little soon in this race. I don't think you can make any argument that Cody's Wish was much the best.
And there was some concern about Cody's Wish drawing the rail that day because he is a horse that comes from off the pace, and I think he completely dismissed that notion of having any worry about being in that kind of position because he just circled the field. All these horses were trying to jockey for some position, starting to make their runs, and he just swooped by them all and powered away from a really good group of horses. It's not like these were complete nobodies.
Yeah, no, he's good. The question with him, to me, is not distance. The question with me is the different dynamic between one-turn and two-turn races. A one-turn race will invariably feature a much faster pace. And for a horse that lacks speed, that's a deep closer, he's getting a fast pace to run into, which enables him to make that big kick that he has. Whereas a two-turn race, a 1 1/8 race, is going to feature a much slower pace. Even if they're moving faster, it's still a slower pace. So you can say it brings him more in the race, but in bringing him more into the race, does it mute his kick a little bit? Now, he has been successful around 2 turns in winning the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, but that was also a race that featured extremely competitive pace in there and a very quick pace. So I don't know if that didn't mitigate a little bit. And to be honest with you, I think you could argue that his Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile was one of his lesser efforts. Cyberknife ran a better race than he did that day. And I'm not saying he ran badly, but I don't think he ran as dynamically. But you also might want to say he's improved this year.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that sentiment. I think Cyberknife ran probably his best race in that effort. And I think that, Cody's Wish, while he has been so successful lately, I think that you do have to wonder if this race is going to play out more in his favor than last time. And I don't know that it necessarily will, but I do just think that he ends up being the best horse in this race. It's not like he barely won last time. It's not like he saved ground and moved inside. He circled the whole field.
No, I agree with all of that, and I picked him as well, but I think these are all fair questions because everybody knows why he's the likeliest winner. He's the best horse in the country. Anybody that debates that is not looking at their races and not looking objectively at it. He's the best horse. The thing I'd say about Zandon is, though, he's more comfortable in these 1 1/8 races making runs from far back. He might have moved a little soon here, so I think he's going to get a better trip. You obviously don't disagree. You have him second. As far as Charge It, I get the argument, we'll show him winning Suburban, that he's the most likely upsetter because of his speed. But is he going to really be in front in this race?
I mean, I do think that he at least will be trying to. Do you see somebody else really taking it to him early?
Well, of course. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be in front.
Okay.
But we'll get to that in a second.
Right,
the
well,
other
I'm
problem I
interested to
have
see
with
who you
this
think.
horse is
Wasn't this just the cherry race for him to win?
Right.
This was a race he was supposed to win.
he is now showing himself to be a very talented horse that doesn't deliver when it matters. Because he ran a big race here. He ran a big race when he ran in the Dwyer. All races that make him a player in this race, no doubt. But when the chips were down the Met Mile, he had a pretty
Where
good
was
trip
he?
that day, and I bet him that day. And he ran okay, but not that good. In these races, he's just not delivering when he's supposed to
And
in
not
those
against
races.
this kind of quality of competition
Right. And
either.
why do I not think he's going to be in front? Because I think that Luis Saez is going to send Giant Game in here. And I do think he is technically faster than Giant Game. But Dale Romans, and we'll show his Cornhusker, used the Cornhusker as a prep for this race with Rose in May. Now, I'm not going to compare the Giant Game to Rose in May, and I don't think Dale would either. But he's done it before, and Dale said he's being aggressive with him. Luis Saez is an aggressive rider. And I don't think that Dale Romans thinks he's going to win the Whitney by rating.
Okay.
He may not win it going in the front, but
Gotta
he's
find
not
out.
winning at rating. And Dale, I don't think there's a lot of trainers out there that know how to upset a big race like Dale Romans does. And I don't like this horse. He is one of the 3 Giant Causeway late foals. He's the one who's giving him his best chance to prove himself on the racetrack. And I like Dale taking a shot, and he's taking a shot, in my opinion, by going the lead, which I think potentially takes away Charge It's likely advantage or potential advantage.
Yes, if you like Charge It, I think that you do have to be concerned about that. If the connections have told you that that's what their intentions are.
And especially a guy like Dale.
Yeah, I mean, some people
Dale knows
will
the value
say
of
things,
speed.
but
You have White Abario third. I have him fourth. I don't
hasn't
know.
he just improved lately?
Yeah, he ran fine last time, but
Yeah.
see, I think the other horses moved too soon, and he waited. I thought that Tyler actually gave him a very, very good ride last time, and I thought making that last move, he's supposed to have picked up Zandon, who tried to move earlier in there. Just me.
Yeah.
He's not impossible in here. He obviously has some fast races. But Cody's Wish is the one to beat, and we're thrilled to have him here. He is the top dog, and a win here, and it puts him in a position where, they'll look to go to the Mile and a Quarter of the Breeders' Cup Classic. He's already been there, done that with the Dirt Mile. So I'm glad to see him in here, and I'm thrilled to see him. The way Bill Mott's going, how big a position do you want to take against him?
Right.
The race number 11. Let's take a look at Ever So Mischievous, who you have third and I have on top. This horse was heavily touted and sort of lost to an impossible horse who ran an amazing race back at Aqueduct, came back with a huge race to break the maiden, and then last time out did lose last time at a very short price. I don't love the last loss, but I'm going to stick with this horse you are going to play against.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that he's clearly got ability. He's going to be a short price. He's a deserving favorite. There's so much talent available here, but I think that there are other ways to go in a spot like this, because I also feel like now putting the blinkers on, maybe they're searching a little bit for a horse to really fine-tune them to get them to the winner's circle more so than he has really shown in the past. And I think this might be a slightly tougher field than he faced last time as well.
That's fair. That's fair. I wish I could totally trust Frat Pack in here. I wondered if he was a little bit benefited by the fact that it rained that day. It wasn't a big speed track, but I think it allowed him to run the field off the feet. But he did beat a horse from the same barn that was highly touted going into the race.
Of course, I want to see him do it on a dry track, which I feel as though we'll have more so by that time. It's already fast right now, but he's one that I just felt, even in debut, finishing third to a horse like Up to the Mark, we've seen how good he is now on the turf. Has some ability, clearly displaying it by coming back with a performance like this. And I think maybe even if he handles a dry track slightly better than he handled the sloppy sealed track, he could be okay.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to take a horse hoping he's better on a dry track than a big race on a wet track. In all likelihood, it probably doesn't make any difference, as
Right.
it frequently doesn't. So I don't worry. I wonder a little bit if he was dressed up a little bit about that. What about Signature, the number 2? I have third and you have second. They had a lot of money for this horse. Why can't he take a big step forward in figures coming off the layoff?
Yeah, I mean, general progression as horses grow up 2 to 3, you could see him be one that ends up being a little bit better now, and it seems like he's working fairly well. So I think he's pretty interesting too.
Do you think I should bet more or less than $10 on 12th Man? I mean, I have to have some insanity insurance on him, don't I? Somewhere.
You like this horse a little bit.
Yeah, he and I are.
Pals?
I don't like him as much as I used to.
Oh.
For better or for worse.
Had a fight or
Probably
something?
allow him to start winning. Race number 12. We're happy this race is on the turf. It came up a terrific race to close out the action on today's card. And let's talk about, we both picked Ruse. Well, let's talk about the Shutters race first, since I had the Ruse replay second. I just feel as though the horse you probably want out of this race is Shutters, who didn't break. And while, yes, he saved ground in there, but he never really was able to get a clear run. I thought Al's Rocket had the cleanest run of all of these horses in here. And I thought he was sort of the most disappointing. Danza with the Stars I'm going to use because he runs well in Saratoga.
He does.
And he just sort of fits. But I thought Shutters was the one you probably want from this race. Did you have a different opinion?
No, I ended up picking him a little bit later down the line. I picked him third. I just felt as though he was the one with the bigger trip in this race over the other two. I agree with everything that you're saying, that he's a horse that was disadvantaged by the start, still ended up in an okay position, but then really just didn't have anywhere to go while other horses got started outside of him, making their moves ahead of him. So I do feel as though he is the one you want out of this race, just like you do.
I agree, but as we roll through this, we've both taken Ruse, and the guys will roll Ruse as soon as they can get to it after this replay. Why do you like Ruse here?
Because I think he's going to be forward. And I think that he's a horse that has some speed that also drops from a race that was tougher than this, won by Dakota Gold.
Well, I
Why do you
also
like
think he
him?
was involved in an extremely quick pace last time out that completely fell apart. I'm happy the 4 scratched from here. We'll see how much pace you get from the 6 Fair Dinkum, who has some speed. And the problem with Ruse is, the reason I almost didn't pick him is he's not a winning type.
No.
And he did have everything his own way when he ran here. I just thought his last race was a big step forward for him.
Yeah.
And I thought if he could run that race, he could win.
Absolutely, and I think this is a slightly easier field as well.
Oh, it's a much easier field than the last race he ran, and it's a tougher field, though, than the race
Yes,
he's winning
yes.
here,
No, I do
where
agree
everything
with
goes
that
his own
sentiment.
way. It's obviously a much easier field than that. What about the number 12 in here, Boys, who is a bit of a weird type who had an absolutely ridiculous trip last time at Gulfstream, over 4 wide throughout much of the first turn. He lost Up to the Mark.
We know how good he is now.
What?
Up to the Mark, we know how good he is now.
Right, he hasn't been working.
No?
And I don't think he's pointing to the Arlington Million, so
Oh,
that
that's not good
occurs to me.
news.
Yes, he was the best turf horse in the country. No, no question about it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't love that they sold this. This is the Peter Brandt horse they sold in dispersal. They got 80,000, and he is badly outposted in this race. But you have him second, I have him fourth.
Yeah, I mean, just one that I felt as though would handle some give in the turf, going back to that prior France form that we had with him. And I don't necessarily love that he's had a gap in time or that sale, as you mentioned, but I just felt as though he would find this course to his liking.
Okay, see what happens with, is it Boys or?
It's probably not buoys. So.
Probably Boys. Regardless, Sarah, thank you very much. Excellent job as always. The Whitney Day
Thanks.
card. We thank you for watching. Head on over to Naira Bets. If you're not on Naira Bets, no better time than the present. Use the promo code SPA200. We will match with $200 of your initial deposit. We have 4 pick 4s today. 2, what did we say? 2, 4, 6, and 9 of our 12 race card. We also have a middle pick 5 as well, which I believe is race 5. Races 1, 5, and is it 1, 5, and yes, 1, 5, and 8. We have a $1 million bonus today and tomorrow. That's the late pick 5 through Naira Bets. If you play them through Naira Bets. If you happen to be the only winner of it, not an easy thing to do, but why not? Why risk it? Play through Naira Bets. Play the late pick 5 through Naira Bets. We also have a cross-country pick 5, a couple of Hambletonians, the Oaks and the Hambletonian. Around our stakes are 3 grade 1s. Be showing all those races on the Big Fox show from 3 to 6 on Fox. We have Taste New York Pavilion every Thursday through Sunday, located near Gate A in the Berkshire Bank Family Zone. And finally, we are on from 12:30 to 3 on FS1, 6 to 7 to close it out on FS2, and that Big Fox show from 3 to 6, covering the Whitney and all of the grade 1s from 3 to 6. Check it all out. Sarah, thanks again. Frank Miramati, thanks to you as well, as he'll be up next for the reprise, the Scratches and Changes. Enjoy a glorious day here on Whitney Day.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy great New York craft beer, hard cider, wine, spirits, and chocolates every Thursday through Sunday at the Taste New York Pavilion. Located inside Gate A at the top of the stretch, fans can enjoy free samples of food and beverages produced exclusively in New York State, from Long Island to the Adirondacks, Western New York to the Capital Region. The Taste New York Pavilion is open now through 5 p.m. And no matter how you enjoy the outdoors, there's an RV for you. An RV makes the perfect base camp at the end of the day. Unwind with your favorite meal made in your onboard kitchen. Enjoy a chat around the campfire. And then recharge for the next day's adventure in a comfortable bed. Go on, take a real vacation. Go RVing.com.